Welcome to the Alliance series of webinars on voluntary targets for road safety and victim support that the UN recently approved. In November 2017, United Nations member states reached consensus on a comprehensive set of 12 global performance targets that altogether work towards reducing road deaths and align with the Sustainable Development Goals 3.6 and 11.2. It is the member states' responsibility to meet these targets, but aligned members NGOs have at their country level an important role to play in supporting delivery, monitoring progress, and holding their governments to account. The second phase of our webinar series hones in on each of the targets and aims to show simple approaches that NGOs can take to help their governments to implement each of the targets in a meaningful and effective way. In this webinar, Rebecca Huang, Economic Affairs Officer for the Sustainable Transport Division of the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, or UNECE, will look at Target 2. By 2030, all countries accede to one or more of the core road safety-related UN legal instruments. Rebecca will explain the different UN conventions relating to road safety and the benefits for member states of acceding to them. By understanding these legal instruments, NGOs are better placed to advocate for with their governments to accede to the conventions or to implement them better. Over to you, Rebecca.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Huang. I am an Economics Affairs Officer with the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe's Sustainable Transport Division. And it's a pleasure to be with you to take you through our United Nations Road Safety Conventions. My presentation today will explain Target 2 of the Global Road Safety Performance Targets. You will then be introduced to the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe and our work on the road safety-related legal instruments that is at the heart of Target 2. Together, we will walk through the UN's core road safety-related legal instruments. These may be categorized into 5 groups: traffic rules, road signs, vehicle regulations, the transport of dangerous goods, and professional driver fatigue. In the first group on traffic rules, I will give you an overview of the 1949 and the 1968 Conventions on Road Traffic. In the second group on road signs, we will look at the 1968 Convention on Road Signs and Signals. In the third group on vehicle regulations, we will find the 1958, the 1997, and the 1998 Vehicle Regulations Agreements. And in the fourth, the 1957 European Agreement for the International Carriage of Dangerous Goods by Road. I will conclude with the fifth and last group that addresses professional driver fatigue through the 1970 European Agreement concerning the work of crews of vehicles engaged in international road transport, otherwise known as the AETR. Along the way, you'll be provided with links to UNECE resources on the slides. So let's get started. In November 2017, 12 voluntary global performance targets were developed at an intergovernmental meeting. These voluntary targets were welcomed by the UN General Assembly when government delegations met in April in New York City. They are also mentioned in the latest General Assembly resolution on improving global road safety. Target 2 aspires to have all countries around the world accede to one or more of the core road safety-related UN legal instruments by the year 2030. As I mentioned just now, the UNECE's work on road safety legal instruments is at the heart of Target 2. Though I won't go into them because they're not the focus of this presentation, voluntary global performance targets 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 are also directly linked to the UNECE's work. And targets 1, 3, and 4 are complemented by the work we do too. As you can see, the UNECE is involved in nearly every aspect of road safety. Before we move on, it's important to mention that the United Nations General Assembly has been drawing attention to the issue of road safety since 2003. To date, the General Assembly has adopted 8 resolutions on improving global road safety. The latest resolution, which was adopted in April 2018, reaffirmed the role and importance of the UN legal instruments on road safety. It also commended member states which have already acceded to these legal instruments. Legal instruments or treaties negotiated under the auspices of an international organization such as the United Nations are usually called conventions. Simply put, a convention is a formal agreement between states. Conventions are normally open for participation by the international community as a whole or by a large number of states. Legal instruments are binding, which means that the contracting parties intended to create legal rights and duties. Secondly, concluded by states or international agreements with treaty-making power. Thirdly, they're governed by international law. And fourth, they're done in writing. Legal instruments are also created on the basis of elaborated good practices. They can also be seen as multilateral platforms for dialogue and the discussion of emerging challenges with the goal of arriving at the best solutions. These best solutions in turn become amendments to the conventions, which is how the UN Road Safety Conventions are kept up to date with the evolving world we live in. As you can see from this map, many countries around the world are already contracting parties to at least one core UN Road Safety Convention. But many more are yet to become contracting parties, especially countries from Africa and Central and South America. The first step for countries and NGOs interested in the UN's road safety legal instruments is to become aware of these conventions and their benefits. After considering their net benefits, countries could make a decision to accede to these conventions. They may do so by depositing an instrument of accession with the UN Secretary-General through the Office of Legal Affairs in New York. As for NGOs, their role could be to advocate with their national governments to accede to these instruments or to better implement them. Upon request and invitation, the UNECE Secretariat provides resource experts on these legal instruments for capacity building national and regional workshops. I just mentioned the UNECE Secretariat. Let me take a minute to introduce you to the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, otherwise known as the UNECE. We are one of 5 United Nations Regional Commission subsidiary bodies of the Economic and Social Council. We are regional in name, but our transport conventions are global. We have 56 member states from not just Europe, but also North America and Central Asia. We manage 58 inland transport conventions which are distributed across many working parties. On this slide, you will see a list of our working parties. Our dedicated working parties are responsible for providing the multilateral platforms for dialogue on the UN Road Safety Conventions. The meetings of our working parties benefit from the regular attendance and contributions of member states from Africa, Asia, and South America too. Let's start to explore each of the UN road safety conventions I have been mentioning. First, the 1949 and 1968 conventions on road traffic. Given the international dimension of road transport, it is essential that traffic rules are harmonized across countries on the basis of international agreements. Did you ever wonder why cars look similar or why driving permits look the same? It's because the 1949 and 1968 conventions on road traffic are the key legal instruments which form the basis for the majority of traffic rules around the world. The 1968 Convention on Road Traffic is the successor to the 1949 Convention on Road Traffic, though the latter continues to remain in force and valid for its contracting parties. Now, where a country is contracting party to both of these conventions, it is the 1968 Convention which prevails. By acceding to these conventions, contracting parties agree to reflect uniform rules of the road in their traffic legislation for safe driving behavior. These include drivers observing speed limits and safe distances with other vehicles on the road, only overtaking when it is safe to do so, wearing seat belts, and not using handheld mobile phones while driving. Drivers should also show extra care to vulnerable road users, that is, pedestrians, cyclists, and motorcyclists. The 1968 Convention on Road Traffic also covers topics such as the conditions for the admission of motor vehicles into international traffic, as well as the necessary conditions to be fulfilled before one can obtain a driving permit, as well as to continue to be eligible to hold a driving permit. The 1968 Convention on Road Traffic is amended to keep up with changes in modern times. For example, it was amended a few years ago to permit driver assistance systems which are in conformity with the vehicle regulations agreements, which we will talk about soon. In a similar way to having harmonized road rules, having international uniformity of road signs, signals, symbols, and road markings greatly facilitates international road traffic and also increases road safety. This is where the 1968 Convention on Road Signs and Signals comes in. It prescribes a system of signs and signals based on the use of shapes, colors, and the use of graphic symbols. Text or inscriptions are discouraged. This convention contains over 250 reference signs. There are three main classes of signs: danger warning signs, regulatory signs, and information signs. There are also subclasses of regulatory signs, including priority signs, prohibitory or restrictive signs, and mandatory signs. Information signs also have subclasses such as facilities or service signs and direction signs, to name a few. The Road Signs and Signals Convention also sets out the requirements for road markings and defines the different types of road markings as well as their colors. Moving on to the three vehicle regulations agreements. The 1958 agreement provides procedures for establishing harmonized UN regulations dealing with the approval, that is the homologation of vehicles, their systems, and their parts. These regulations target safety, environmental protection, that is air and noise pollution emissions, energy efficiency, and theft prevention. The 1998 agreement enhances the 1958 agreement by establishing a process through which countries from all regions of the world can jointly develop UN global technical regulations regarding the same 4 aspects targeted by the 1958 agreement. Finally, the 1997 agreement provides the legal framework and procedures for the adoption of uniform UN rules for carrying out periodic technical inspections of vehicles which are in use and delivering international certificates of inspection. Together, these 3 agreements provide the framework for the establishment of regulations and rules for safe and environmentally friendly vehicles. By becoming contracting parties to these agreements, countries can benefit from the work done by the international community and ensure that safer and more environmentally friendly vehicles are marketed in their territories. For example, some manufacturers are maximizing revenues by removing safety features and emission control devices in new vehicles sold in countries which are not contracting parties to the vehicle regulations agreements. This explains why 2 new vehicles of the same model sold in 2 different countries can significantly differ in terms of safety or environmental performance. This is also the reason why technical regulations for vehicles are so important, not only for the countries producing vehicles, but also for all other countries importing vehicles. To summarize, the vehicle regulations agreements contain detailed information on vehicle regulations and rules. These relate to the emission of pollutants and carbon dioxide through fuel consumption, noise, lighting and light signaling. They also relate to general safety, passive safety, such as safety belts, child restraint systems, and motorcycle helmets, and also active safety, automation, and connectivity. Examples of these include braking, lane departure warning, advanced emergency braking systems, and excitingly, automated and autonomous driving vehicles. Before moving on to the next convention, it's important to say that the countries which are contracting parties to the vehicle regulations agreements have not only seen much better results in terms of their road safety compared to countries that are not contracting parties, but these countries also don't pay much more for having safer vehicles. The price variation among countries tends to arise from taxation, marketing considerations, and pricing strategies rather than from the costs of added or enhanced safety features. As we know, road traffic crashes cause human injuries and also damage the environment. The consequences are worsened when dangerous goods are involved. The European Agreement for the International Carriage of Dangerous Goods by Road, or we use the acronym the ADR, is intended to increase the safety of the international transport of dangerous goods by road. ADR does this by classifying the dangerous goods depending on their type of danger. For example, explosives, whether they are flammable or radioactive. The ADR also defines the conditions for the safe transport of dangerous goods. For example, the type of tank, drum, or packaging that can be used, such as glass, metal, and etc., their maximum capacity, as well as characteristics. The ADR agreement also identifies packaging and vehicles for dangerous goods with labels and marks which allow emergency services to identify the goods being transported and to take a quick decision if there is an emergency response in the case of accidents. ADR also facilitates significantly the border crossing and transit of dangerous goods between countries which are contracting parties to the ADR, as certificates and approvals prescribed by the agreement and issued in one contracting party are automatically recognized by all other contracting parties. Finally, I would like to mention a lesser-known UN Road Safety Convention, the European Agreement concerning the work of crews of vehicles engaged in international road transport. It's a rather long title, so it's commonly referred to as the AETR. The AETR improves road safety and lowers the risk of accidents involving heavy vehicles that are caused by professional driver fatigue. It does this by prescribing maximum daily and weekly driving hours, as well as mandatory rest periods for drivers. So this ends my presentation, which was a collaborative effort involving my colleagues Yu Wei, Robert, Rosa, Francois, Walter, and myself. Please visit the UNECE website for more information and all the resources that you saw at the bottom of the slides. Please don't hesitate to contact us at roadsafety@un.org if you would like more information about the UN Road Safety Conventions or about the UNECE's work in general. Thank you for listening and stay safe on the road.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. This webinar is available online and you can go back and listen to it as many times as you like. If you have any questions for Rebecca or for the Alliance, please let us know via the evaluation form and don't forget to give us your feedback on our webinars. Thank you for listening today and have a safe day.